The feast of the Nativity of St. John the Baptist in the two places dedicated to him in Ein Karem, near Jerusalem. The Hermitage immersed in nature where he withdrew before the preaching, and the shrine built at the place of his birth. What unites Croatia and the custody of the Holy Land is a very close bond, which was born with the story of St. Nicholas Tavelić and his three companions, the first Franciscan martyrs of the custody of the Holy Land. 50 years ago they were canonized by Pope Paul VI. The faithful of the Bethlehem area gathered to celebrate the solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Mass in the Salesian church, then the procession to St. Catherine's church. The city of Beit Shahor near Bethlehem was recognized as World Craft City 2020. The processing of olive wood objects has attracted the attention of the World Craft Council affiliated to UNESCO. St. Gregory the Illuminator, St. Varian. These are only two of the saints celebrated by the Armenian Apostolic Church, also in Jerusalem. Scenes from the life of the patron saint of Armenia are represented in the paintings in the Basilica of the Holy Sepulchre. It is one of the most prosperous places around Jerusalem, yet its name contains the word desert, and the reason is closely linked to an important part of the life of the protagonist of this valley, St. John the Baptist. The Franciscan Hermitage of St. John in the desert is in fact located 5 kilometers outside the village of Ein Karem, on the slopes of the hill. According to tradition, it was in this isolated area that the Baptist withdrew before announcing the coming of the Lord, who he baptized on the banks of the River Jordan. We have first of all the church dedicated to St. John the Baptist right above. Below the church there is the grotto. Tradition has it that it was in this grotto that St. John lived his life of penance and prayer. It is not a desert like that of the Sahara or Judah, where there are stones and sand. No, it is a desert in the sense of an uninhabited place. The beauty of nature makes it the ideal place for rest and prayer, following the example of St. John.
Questo luogo richiama a noi l'importanza di un tempo di raccoglimento.
This place reminds us of the importance of the time of reconciliation. During the time of the pandemic, we were all forced to stop. I think that many people in this circumstance had the opportunity to reflect on what is most important in life.
Di riflettere su quello che dapprima, su quello che è il più importante nella vita.
As every year in the first days of summer, Vespers in St. John in the Desert opened the feast dedicated to the Nativity of the forerunner of Christ.
San Giovanni Battista ci presenta, ci indica la via.
St. John the Baptist shows us the way. He shows us how to get to Jesus. Before we get to Jesus, we have to perform a very personal act. And in fact, while he preaches conversion before baptizing John the Baptist, he says, "Convert," and he makes this appeal to everyone.
E questo appello lo rivolge a tutti quanti.
Going backwards in the life of the Baptist, the attention moves the following day to St. John in Montana, in the center of Ein Karem.
Qui dove c'era la casa di ZECHARIAH, conserviamo una grotta.
Here, where there was the house of ZECHARIAH, we keep a cave. Certainly it is not a cellar in a shed that a child is born, but since there is no longer the house, we remember here in the cave the Nativity of the Baptist.
La Natività del Battista.
Brother Francesco Patron, Custos of the Holy Land, presided at the solemn Mass in front of, among others, some representatives of the local Jewish community, with whom the Franciscans have a good relationship of friendship. And there was also the Consul General of Spain, Ignacio Garcia Valdecasas Fernandez, given the long-standing link between the shrine and Spain. Given in obedience to what the angel had predicted to Father ZECHARIAH in the temple, explained Brother Patron in his homily, John's is a name that breaks with the family tradition. It seems that already in this we can read the novelty that the Baptist will announce in his preaching, that is, the breaking of the kingdom of God into history in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. What unites Croatia and the custody of the Holy Land is a very close bond which was born with the story of St. Nicholas Tavelić, of Croatian origin precisely, and his three companions, the first Franciscan martyrs of the custody of the Holy Land. In 1391 they lived in Jerusalem in the convent, destroyed 150 years later, built on Mount Zion along the cenacle, and public evangelization, then forbidden, led the group to martyrdom.
Per lunghi secoli è rimasta la devozione.
For many centuries we have been devoted to them, but it was only in 1970 that Pope Paul VI canonized these first martyrs of the custody of the Holy Land.
Questi nostri primi martiri della custodia.
The 50th anniversary of the canonization was commemorated with a Mass in the chapel, whose side altar dedicated to the saint is a gift from Croatia, of the Apostolic Delegation in Jerusalem. The Mass, presided by Brother Patron, Custodies of the Holy Land, and concelebrated by the Friars of the Custodies Discretory, was attended by Bishop Leopoldo Girelli, Apostolic Nuncio to Israel and Cyprus and Apostolic Delegate for Jerusalem and Palestine. On the same day, great celebrations were held in Šibenik, the birthplace of St. Nicholas Tavelić.
Questo santo ha un valore particolarmente importante per il popolo.
This saint has a particularly important value for the Croatian people. He wishes to present the custody of the Holy Land with a bronze statue of St. Nicholas Tavelić, to be placed as close as possible to the place where St. Nicholas received his mission, which is the cenacle. Therefore, the statue will be placed in the garden of the cenacle, as well as a chapel dedicated to St. Nicholas Tavelić will also be built in the shepherd's field to cultivate and grow this bond, which is very important to us.
Per coltivare e per far crescere questo legame che per noi è molto importante.
But the signs of friendship between Croatia and the custody already present in the Holy Land are numerous.
Soltanto tramite San Nicola Tavelić, sono tramite, per esempio,
It is the pride of a small people who has a saint, the first saint in modern times. The custody's connection with Croatia is not only through St. Nicholas Tavelić. There is, for example, the Garden of Gethsemane, which was bought by the Croatians and donated to the custody. There is the wood from Mount Tabor for the construction of the basilica. We also like to remember Boniface of Ragusa. In the 16th century, when the friars left the cenacle, he found the stability of the friars at the friary of St. Saviour. Finally, there is the great restoration of the Holy Sepulchre. Here too we find traces of the links between Croatia and the custody.
This is a great celebration. It's the Feast of Love. Jesus loved us so much. He gave himself for us so that he could save us. I hope that everyone will learn to love as Jesus loved us. Despite all the circumstances we are going through during this coronavirus pandemic, we want to love and live. Life is beautiful, and with Jesus, it is more beautiful.
Given the problems and the new increase in coronavirus cases, it was surprising to see a large number of faithful celebrate the Feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus on June the 19th in Bethlehem. The feast began with a solemn Mass in the Salesian Church of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, presided over by the Apostolic Administrator of the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem, Monsignor Pier Battista Pizzaballa.
We know that there are some center of disease again, but today we have a demonstration that people are not afraid. We brought Jesus in the midst of our life in the city of Bethlehem. We have to be careful, but the life is back. And with a lot of problems, but the life is back, and we will be united to face also these challenges together with all other challenges.
The solemn Mass was followed by the traditional procession along the streets and the alleys of Bethlehem to St. Catherine's Church. The Sacred Heart of Jesus moved along the streets of the city of Bethlehem. It was an excellent opportunity because life has returned to the city, as the hope to overcome this pandemic and return to our normal life in this holy city. The hearts of the faithful were full of love for the Sacred Heart, eager for the mercy of Jesus. We all depend on God, just as the Gospel says, "If God is with us, who can be against us?" We were surprised by this large number of participants from the parish and the Bethlehem area. The scout groups also came for the first time from the city of Jerusalem. We thank God for everything. The World Craft Council, a UNESCO-affiliated organization, has announced the recognition of Beit Shahor as a World Craft City for 2020, thanks to the production of religious objects made of olive wood, considered an inherited tradition for most of its inhabitants. The Minister of Tourism and Antiquities, Rula Maaya, announced this on June 13th.
بيت سحور تعتمد بشكل كبير على السياحة وهي تعتبر ثالث مقصد للسياحة الوافدة إلى فلسطين بعد القدس وبيت.
The city of Beit Sahur is heavily dependent on tourism and is considered the third destination in Palestine after Jerusalem and Bethlehem. There are many tourist and archaeological sites, many olive wood workshops as well as souvenir shops selling these products to pilgrims and visitors. Therefore, this recognition further promotes tourism in Palestine, highlights the historical and archaeological sites of Beit Sahur, and helps to preserve the cultural heritage of traditional crafts.
فلسطين من مقومات تاريخية وأثرية وتراثية وأيضا يساهم في الحفاظ على الموروث الثقافي الفلسطيني والحرف التقليدية.
This recognition will allow a special sticker provided by UNESCO to be affixed to objects made in Beit Sahur, thus contributing to the promotion of local craftsmanship. It will also allow a committee composed of the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, Beit Sahur City Council, the Union of Traditional Crafts, the Governorate of Bethlehem and the Chamber of Commerce to submit requests for support for those working in this sector to the World Craft Council. We needed to create a craft city, so we moved all the olive wood workshops located in the houses or in the old town centre to a special area to reduce pollution and noise. We also provided facilities and assistance and facilitated the exchange of experiences with other countries. A special request will be made to set up a professional school to teach olive wood handicrafts and thus ensure their continuity for future generations. The Governorate of Bethlehem is experiencing difficult economic conditions due to the interruption of the tourism sector in the world resulting from the coronavirus pandemic. 70% of the city's families depend on the tourism sector for their livelihood. I've been doing this job for 40 years. This is the first time we've been through difficult circumstances like this. My grandfather did this job, my father inherited it from him, and I, in turn, am teaching it to my son. It's a hereditary profession. As far as our products are concerned, at this time we don't do real marketing. We work and keep our products until the situation improves. The recognition of the World Craft Council will improve the opportunities for Palestinian craft products to find their place among the various countries and cultures of the world, and it will help to support local artisanal production as integral part of the cultural heritage of the Holy Land. Christianity in Armenia has very ancient roots. It would have come to Armenia thanks to the work of the disciples Thaddeus and Bartholomew. But the bond with the Holy Land is linked to Saint Gregory the Illuminator, who contributed to the conversion of the nation in 301 under the reign of Tiridates III. In the oldest part of the Basilica of the Holy Sepulchre, in the chapel that the status quo identifies as Saint Helena's, but that the Armenians called Saint Kikor, you can see the main scenes from the life of the saint, patron of Armenia.
According to our tradition, after he converted the whole nation into Christianity, he made a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. But before he entered to the Holy Tomb, so he wanted to prepare himself for the entry. And it took him 7 years to feel that he is prepared and he is ready to enter to the Holy Tomb. There's the preparation of himself to enter the Holy Tomb took place here in this area.
From the conversion of the Armenian nation to Christianity, the baptism of King Tiridates, to the construction of the first cathedral, the painting on the walls tell a 1,000-year-old story.
According to the story, he was thrown to this pit by the same king, Tiridates, who later on became sick, and then he was cured by miracle by Gregory the Illuminator. We can see the foundation of the first Armenian church, of the first Armenian cathedral, and also the first Christian cathedral in the world. In 303, Gregory the Illuminator saw a vision. And in this vision, Christ himself descended down and showed him the place where he wanted him to build the cathedral. Okay? That's why the area and the center of the spiritual center of the Armenian church is called Miadzin. H is descended, Miadzin is the begotten son.
The chapel, on the other hand, which is located under the apse discovered in the 1970s, is dedicated to Saint Vartan, commander of the Armenian troops in the War of 449 against Persia, who wanted to convert Armenia to Zoroastrianism, religion of ancient Iran.
This chapter of history in our nation's history is so important, and specifically this war, that Vartan and all his friends that fell in this war were later canonized by the Armenian Church, and every year in February we celebrate the feast of St. Vartan and his friends.
The patron saint of Armenia has his own dedicated church in the western part of the Holy City, where he is solemnly celebrated twice a year, one during Lent and the other shortly after Pentecost.
This church was built in the 80s of the 19th century. Originally it was built by the German Templars. We have 7 feasts dedicated to Saint Gregory the Illuminator during the year. So 2 of them we celebrate here in this. And of course we hold here Vespers every Thursday for the needs of the Armenian community.
The Armenian Apostolic Church commemorates significant events and people in its spiritual life, a church which, through the centuries and in the midst of many difficulties, has been able to maintain as a church and nation fidelity to Christ.